Our main message at the negotiations is that the most food insecure and vulnerable people are the most at risk from climate change today, and that urgent action is needed to help them build their resilience to climate change. Climate change means more floods, more droughts, and more storms. The most food insecure people are often the ones who live in the most degraded environments, dependent on agriculture for their livelihoods. When a drought or a flood occurs, they lose assets. They're forced to reduce their consumption of food. They're forced to pull their kids out of school or migrate in search of labor. Unless we help these households become more resilient against climate shocks, they'll be unable to adapt to a changing climate, unable to become food secure, and unable to realize the development dreams that they have. Over the last 10 years, 50% of WFP's operations have helped people affected by climate disasters to recover. We've spent $23 billion responding to climate disasters during that period. One of the fundamental goals of the climate change agreement is to protect food production and people's economic well-being. Food security is at the center of climate change discussions. At the climate change negotiations, countries will gather together to talk about how they address the challenge of climate change, how they address its root causes, but also how they help people adapt to climate change and deal with the impacts of climate disasters. At the negotiations, WFP will be helping countries to understand in more detail the impact of climate change on the most food insecure and vulnerable people, and most importantly, help governments understand the things that they can do to help those people to adapt and to deal with climate disasters in the future. At the same time, WFP will be listening to countries to understand how we as a United Nations agency can help those countries prepare themselves for the changing climate. I mean, what we want to achieve is that the climate change agreement adequately includes provisions to help the most vulnerable food insecure people to adapt to climate change, to make sure that they're protected against climate disasters, and to make sure that people can ultimately thrive in a changing climate. There are three main areas where WFP wants to share its experience with countries at the climate change negotiations. We've been doing a lot of work on analysis of the food security impact of climate change, which can help countries develop their own plans for dealing with food security and climate change in the future. We'll share our innovative work on climate change adaptation, resilience building, and risk management. WFP is the second largest multilateral implementer of the UN FCCC Adaptation Fund, and we'll be working with countries to improve adaptation programming for food security. We will be focusing on supporting countries in their negotiations on agriculture, food security, loss and damage, and climate finance.